Guys, we're running out of time this semester to cover chapters 14 and 15 in some of my sections. So what I'm going to do is post these two chapters for you in a YouTube video, and hopefully you'll watch them. But if not, that's your problem and not mine. So we are going to cover tab 7 today. It starts on page 369, and it covers chapters 14 and 15 for the persuasive speech, and this is all about persuading. So chapter 14 discusses your tools for persuading. What is persuasive speaking? The first thing that this chapter does is define persuasion as a deliberate attempt by the speaker to create, reinforce, or change the attitudes, beliefs, values, and or behaviors of the listener. Alright, so let's break this definition down into some smaller parts, and then we'll move on to the actual tools for persuading. A deliberate attempt, think back to your communication model that we discussed in chapter 5-ish, and this is the speaker's actual attempt. I know I hate to use the same words for defining something, but it's your actual attempt by the speaker to send a message to the audience, and the speaker is responsible for initiating the message that they're trying to conceive to their audience. And then we move on with the definition: to create, reinforce, or change attitudes, beliefs, values, and or behaviors. Think back to those that we discussed way back in, I think, chapter 2 maybe, in discussing our audience analysis. Attitudes, these are your learned and persistent psychological responses, predispositions, or inclinations to act one way or another. Beliefs are anything that people have learned to accept as plausible based on interpretation and judgment. Values, these are also referred to as core beliefs, are enduring principles related to worth or what a person sees as right or wrong, or important or unimportant. And finally, behaviors, these are unconcealed actions or reactions people have, often in response to some sort of stimuli. When an audience does not have the knowledge to hold a set attitude, belief, value, or a way to understand why they behave the way they do, you persuade the audience to create or adopt the attitude, belief, value, or behavior that you are advocating for. If the audience already agrees with you, you reinforce their beliefs. At other times, you're going to try to convince your audience to change their beliefs. So that's what we're going to be doing with our persuasive speeches that you've all picked out. You're doing your pros and cons. And remember, we're doing pro person speaks for 8 minutes, con speaks for 10 minutes, and then the pro person does a rebuttal for up to 2 minutes. What should a persuasive speech do? We're now on page 372. You're going to narrow a listener's options, seek a response, support a proposition of fact, value, or policy, rely on varied and valid support materials, use highly structured organization, use different types of appeals, highlight emotive and stylistic language, emphasize powerful and direct delivery, and acknowledge the audience's freedom to decide. And it's going to cover 9 things in just this part of the chapter. I know, it's a long chapter, and I don't think I'm going to have time to cover it in class. Alright, by narrowing your listeners' options, the job of the ethical persuasive speaker is to determine the best and safest option and support that decision logically and offer information to the audience in a manner that allows the audience to make the best decision based on the information that you give them. That's why we're doing this in a debate, so that you guys can each offer your own opinions and points of view, and then let your audience decide which view they like best. But don't worry, I'm grading. The classmates don't count. Seeking a response. In the persuasive speech, you have an audience response in mind that you're trying to get out of them. So that's why we've developed this pros and cons, or if you're doing the obesity speech, it's the lifestyle, epidemic, or disease. Supporting a proposition of fact, value, or policy. When you're creating a persuasive speech, you have an overreaching argument. This is the body of your speech, by the way, that supports the assertion you are making in your central idea. I like the examples that they provide here, but I'll let you read those on your own time. I mean, if you want to follow along with the book and read the page numbers. Rely on varied and valid support materials, okay? Number 1, use different types of sources. Number 2, make sure that your sources are credible and you're not just using somebody's blog. Yeah, blogs are great places to find information about this kind of stuff that you're researching right now, but are they certified in foods or nutrition, or are they an athlete? Take that into consideration before you go inside a blog. I'm trusting you to be smart about the type of information that you're using in your persuasive speech. A lot of you did really well in your informative speeches, so I trust that this is all going to roll over into your persuasive speech as well. Use a highly structured organization. Organization is key for a persuasive speech, alright? And if you have any questions about how you should organize this, see chapters 5 and 6. Those are in tab 3 on how to organize your speech. And see specifically page 388 on how to arrange your arguments effectively. Using different types of appeals, also called proofs. These are the means by which you prove or establish the argument you are making. So, because as human beings we like to rationalize our thoughts and we like to have sources to back up what we're saying and not just pull facts out of the air, you can... I don't know where I was going with that. My train of thought derailed, and this is a video. Oh well, moving on. Highlight emotive and stylistic language. See Chapter 8 for this on using language successfully and picking words that are going to appeal to your audience, because you definitely want to hit an emotional chord. You want to pull some heartstrings and make them sway for your side and not your opponent's side. Emphasize powerful and direct delivery. See Chapter 9 for that. I'm not going to repeat it for you. We did that in class I don't know how long ago. And then you also need to acknowledge that your audience does have the right to decide whether they're pro or con, and just know that you're debating with your classmates and in front of them, and then the 2 guest judges that we're going to have. I don't even know who they are yet, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. Oh, and I like this little green box on the bottom of page 375. Persuasion is not coercion. Coercion is forcing somebody via threats or intimidation to do something against his or her will, while persuasion gives the person the necessary knowledge to change or act differently via her or his own free will. What are the traditional appeals used to persuade? Pathos, mythos, ethos, logos. Oh my gosh, how many times have we covered these 4 throughout the book? But I'm going to cover them one more time for you today. Appealing to pathos. Your pathos deals with the listener's emotions. So what are you going to do? You're going to tug at some heartstrings to get your audience to side with you during this debate. If you look on page 377, according to Ricardo, the ICRC's head of the delegation in Haiti, said, amid the crying and wailing, people are spending the night outside. People are trying to comfort each other. What you are hearing in the street are the prayers of thanks of those who survived. End quote. These Haitians survived the quake, and now it is time for us to help them survive the aftermath. You are appealing to people's emotions, and they want to help other people. So that's pathos, emotion. Maybe that's going to be on the final. I'm going to post more exam questions later tonight, I promise. Mythos. Alright, this is often fueled by emotion and not always viewed as a noteworthy appeal. Mythos relates to a sense of one's history in the larger culture and the need to be a member of that culture. So it's your need and your feeling of sense to belong to something bigger. That's why a lot of us are in groups. Oh, ethnocentrism, by the way, definition. You'll figure out from the exam or not seen enough. This is the notion that one's culture or viewpoint is superior to that of others. Isn't that what everybody thinks all the time? Appeal to ethos. Ethos is the credibility inspired by the speaker's character, or what Aristotle called moral character. Alright? And it also breaks down competency, character, charisma, and then your ethos progressing through 3 levels: the initial level, derived level, and terminal level. If you have questions about it in class, please ask. Otherwise, I'm just going to skip over this and assume you've read. Appealing to logos. This is the human ability to use logic, and it can be a powerful persuasive tool. When you appeal to logic or logos in a speech, you appeal to the listener's ability to reason through stats, facts, and expert testimony to reach a conclusion. So basically, if you're giving your people credible sources for your information, then your audience is more likely to side with you because you're appealing to their logical side of their brain. Moving on to page 380, what are the modern appeals used to persuade? Need, harmony, gain, and commitment. Need. So, the modern method of persuasion recognizes that your audience members have needs they see as important and necessary to fulfill. And, oh, look at that. On page 381, we look at the hierarchy of needs and Monroe's motivated sequence that we already covered. Moving on. Appealing to harmony. In his book, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, Leon Festinger introduced cognitive dissonance theory, which emphasizes the human need to be in a harmonious state. However, sometimes there are conflicting attitudes, values, beliefs, ideas, or behaviors that cause an inharmonious feeling. For example, think about how you feel when you eat really good pizza or chocolate cake. For me, right now, it's snickerdoodle cookies. True story. Part of your mind is happy with the taste of the food and eating it all, but another part of your conscious is reminding you that eating a lot of pizza or cake is not healthy. And we're coming to the holidays, and we're all going to gain a bunch of weight and be happy. Kind of. So, appealing to the idea that everything is synced up in your audience's mind. Appealing to gain. When you appeal to gain, you are recognizing that most people weigh or evaluate their actions based on what the actions might cost them. So this is a moving from, I'm in a bar and the wind's blowing and it's causing my door to kind of flutter open and shut. It's weird. It's dark, in case you couldn't tell. Anyway, appealing to gain, you're recognizing that most people weigh or evaluate the actions based. I already said that. But anyway, taking your cost-benefit analysis from your econ classes, which are super boring, but math-related, so they're awesome. So taking that and applying it to real-life situations, your cost-benefit analysis. Finally, appealing to commitment. This is recognizing how your audience members might react to your message depending upon their relationship with the topic. Alright, some people are going to be really into it and are going to know a lot about it. Other people aren't going to know a lot about it and just be like, IDK. So this relates back to audience analysis stuff, and that's back in chapter 1. So if you have questions about that, refer to chapter 1 and then refer to me. Yep. What are the parts of an argument? Your claim, evidence, and warrant. An argument is a reason or a series of reasons you give to support an assertion. Arguments have 3 parts: a claim, evidence, and warrant, which I just said. I like to repeat myself. The claim of an argument is the assertion you are making and will be a claim of fact, value, or policy. Each claim should be a single, concise sentence. Gives you a bunch of examples on page 385, so you can read those. Evidence. Information that proves your claim. Your research. Oh, the research you did that is credible information and you're using various types of sources. Congratulations. Glad you're listening. Warrants. Not arrest warrants, BT dubs. Different kind. These are assumptions that act as links between the evidence and the claim. So I like the flowcharts that we have here on page 386 in our books. So evidence, what information do you have to support your claim? Go to your warrant. How do you justify moving from this evidence to the claim? And then your claim, what exactly is your assertion or stance? So let's read the examples they have here in our book. Evidence is chicken is a great source of protein. Naturally raised chickens have a better nutrient value than those raised on factory farms. By the way, factory farms are also known as CAFOs. I did a research paper on that. And then I helped my husband with one. No, his was on drug testing. I helped my sister with that one. Warrant. Anyone raising his or her own chickens has access to a more nutrient-enriched form of protein. Makes sense. And then the claim, local citizens should be allowed to raise chickens. I think there's an issue right now with that actually in South Bend. They do allow you to have chickens, but only a certain breed. So this guy's having to get rid of some of his chickens, but he actually does harvest the eggs in town and harvest his chickens in town. I don't want to know exactly how they're harvested. I know that there's like beheading and plucking of feathers. But moving on. There are authoritative warrants, motivational warrants, and substantive warrants. Authoritative link the evidence to the claim by assuming that the claim is accurate based on the credibility of the source of the support materials. While motivational warrants link the evidence to the claim based on the speaker's and audience's needs and values. There are also examples of all this on page 387, so you can read. Substantive warrants. They link the evidence to the claim based on the reliability of the support materials. In other words, are there enough examples and or data to be convincing? And are the support materials representative? So, representative meaning, is it from a diverse enough population or subpopulation that you plucked your people from to do your data? And also, is the time frame long enough that the research has been done, or was it just a one and done type of thing? What are the different types of arguments? Deduction, induction, analogy, cause, and authority. So argument by deduction, this constructs a series of general statements known as the premises, that together prove the claim or conclusion correct. Again, example below. That was on page 388. Argument by induction. This is when you will argue from specific cases to a general statement suggesting something to be likely based on the specific cases. So, I mean, maybe this is a little above your heads right now, but think of case law when the Supreme Court hands down a decision from a major case, and then we use that Supreme Court case to decide local cases because it is supreme law of the land. So that's a way to kind of rationalize the argument by induction. And again, check out the examples there on page 390. Also, there's a tip. Inductive arguments are useful when you know your audience is against what you are about to claim. But for anybody who's written a brief, an appellate brief, you know all about that stuff. But you usually don't write those until law school. So, if you have done that, congratulations. Maybe I'll bring you a cookie. Psych. My dog just jumped off the recliner and almost knocked it over. True story. Argument by analogy. This is when you conclude that something will be accurate for one case if it is true for another similar case. So, here's the example that they have. There's not a lot on this section. But the example is, because the United States and Canada are so similar and the universal plan works in Canada, then universal health care will work in the United States. How on point are they right now? But it's a relevant topic, something to consider, but I think it's a lie. We developed private health care before we ever did freaking universal health care or public health care, and I just don't think it's going to work. We're too used to what we have, and going to the public health care is quite expensive unless you qualify for a subsidy. And this public health care is really only going to work if young, healthy people who have full-time jobs are paying the prices without the subsidy and supporting older people or those who can't afford it. So I think this is just going to flop, and I think when it's time for re-election to come around, or not re-election, but the next presidential election, that this somebody's going to run on getting rid of the Affordable Health Care Act. And everybody's going to vote for that person because nobody likes this right now. So let's see what happens next. Argument by cause. This attempts to demonstrate. I know I just went off on a tangent. I'm doing a video and I'm sidebar. Anyway, argument by cause. This attempts to demonstrate a relationship between two events or factors in which one of the events or factors causes the other. So let's look at the example. The increase in violence in our public schools is the effect of increased violence in the entertainment world. Alright, that was the effect to cause. Now let's move to cause to effect. Procrastinating on your assignments will cause you to get lower grades. Sometimes I work better under pressure. A lot of you probably do too. Or at least think you do. Ha. Argument by authority. This locates its power in the ethos of the testimony of others you might use to support your claim. So when you use this type of argument, you collect testimony from individuals the audience will perceive as experts on the topic. So somebody who has some kind of accreditation or certification, that's what you're doing there. Man, I'm just using my laptop camera, and as you can tell, it's really bad, and it looks like my face is very shiny. And I'm multicolored, like pink. But my sweater's the right color. Maybe it really is pink, and I just don't realize it. Sorry. What are faulty arguments? There's 14 here, so I can't even hold up my fingers for this. Hasty generalization, faulty use of authority, post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Say that 5 times fast. False analogy, ad hominem, either or fallacy, slippery slope, begging the question, straw man, ad ignoration, ad ignorant, I don't know. Non sequitur, sequitur, close enough. Nobody's here to correct me. Appeal to tradition, ad populum, and faulty emotional appeals. You can see that list on page 392. When a speaker creates an argument, she or he can unintentionally or intentionally create a faulty argument known as a fallacy. So, number 1, hasty generalization. What is it? This occurs when you use faulty inductive reasoning, like from specific cases to the general claim. You commit this fallacy when you have an insufficient amount of valid support materials to draw a conclusion about the general claim based on those support materials. How can you avoid it? By using a significant number of current and quality cases to argue from the specific to a general statement. This will help prevent this type of fallacy. What a fun word. Faulty use of authority. This occurs when you use information or testimony from someone who is not a legitimate authority on the subject. The source's lack of authority may have several origins, from insufficient expertise, not an expert in the area under discussion. Maybe you found a lawyer who works in environmental law and not personal injury. Big difference. Area of expertise is not a legitimate discipline or area, like making your own major. Other experts disagree with this expert, so maybe some very controversial opinions that aren't highly accepted in the field or in general around the world. The expert could be biased for one reason or another, or even the speaker does not identify the source's qualifications. So if you fail to mention that this person is qualified. How can you avoid faulty use of authority? If you wish to use expert testimony to support a claim, make sure the person is a recognized expert related to the topic and note her or his expertise during the speech. We're all so used to saying his or her that this book in this chapter has been writing everything her or his. Kind of refreshing. Moving on to page 394, number 3, post hoc ergo propter hoc. This is Latin, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. And it translates to after this, therefore, because of this. Can we just say that? And this occurs when causal reasoning, when you assume that because one event comes after another, the first event must be the cause of the second. Let's just go straight to the example. People consume a lot of ice cream in the summer months. Crime in many cities rises during the summer. Ice cream consumption must increase crime. True, it has to be. False, not. Have nothing to do with each other. Alright? More likely the hot weather and the closings of schools are what influence crime levels. BT dubs. And how can you avoid using this fallacy? By spending the necessary time during your speech to help your audience see how the two events relate and could possibly influence each other. Wow. So having credible research and making actual connections in your research, not just saying, oh, bam, A causes Z. No, there's a lot in the middle. False analogy. This occurs when two things being compared are not similar or are dissimilar in some radical and or important way related to the claim. Again, going straight to the example. Comparing campus life on a small liberal arts campus to that of a large state university campus. When trying to argue that they are really the same experience is a false analogy. My life at IU was very different from my life at Valparaiso. But I also need to keep in mind that I was studying different things at the time. So, law was harder, so not as fun, but I studied law in undergrad, but I had more fun. Law? Oh my god. Oh, it's just a ladybug landing on my computer. I'm a pansy, by the way, for those of you who haven't figured it out yet. It's dead. And it's like 7 years bad luck, though. Ad hominem? I don't know. Maybe I said it right. But this is another Latin phrase, and it translates to or against the person. So speakers often use this to divert the audience's attention from the real issue by attacking the person who is associated with a claim, presenting a counter-argument, or by challenging the speaker's claim. It happens most often in debates and presidential campaigns. Convenient. And then there are different types of ad hominems, like abusive, circumstantial, guilt by association, and inverse. And you can define these on your own on page 395. I'm going to skip the how you can avoid it and other names or related types. This chapter is taking forever anyway. Either or fallacy. What is it? This occurs when an argument considers only two alternatives, when in fact there are more options. So, you are either for parent schools or you are an atheist. That's not true. That's an either-or fallacy. Slippery slope. This occurs when you argue that a relatively small event or step sets off a chain reaction to disaster. We're all headed for disaster in this storm. The windows haven't blown in yet. It's not like Wizard of Oz up in here yet. So, if you drop out of school, you'll end up in jail. I call not true. Also, I like this example. If you allow for an increase in state taxes, the government will just want more and more. That one might be true. Begging the question, this happens when you use deductive reasoning incorrectly by implicitly or explicitly assuming the conclusion of the argument in one of the premises. Here's an example. Women should not be allowed to join men's sports teams. These teams are for men only. Okay. I mean, with my athletic abilities, I only want to join the ladies' team anyway. The dudes are going to show me up, but most ladies would show me up too. So maybe can I go play on like a t-ball league instead? I might win there. Also, another example: the belief in God is universal. After all, everyone believes in God. No. Some people don't believe at all. They question any God's existence, and there are other deities out there. So, moving on. Straw man. This is when you ignore a person's actual position and substitute a weaker, distorted, exaggerated, or misrepresented version of his or her claim. Their claim is wrong or flimsy because you make it that way. Some senators are pushing to cut funding and troops for the current war. I can't understand why they want to leave us defenseless and our current troops on the front lines exposed. That's the example, by the way. I wish there was more background to that, but there's not. So don't misread your partner's opposing viewpoint. Ignoration. I don't speak Latin, but I did take Latin in 7th grade. True story. I got an A. And I was yelled at by Mrs. Varga, the teacher. Sidebar, because I skipped class one day. No, false. I was at National Junior Honor Society, and there were like 5 of us who missed that day, but we had a sub, and the sub marked me as absent instead of excused. And then when Mrs. Varga came back the next day, she goes, just because you're a good student doesn't mean you can skip class, especially in my class. Long story short, my mom came to school because I went home crying because I never got in trouble, and she yelled at Mrs. Varga and made Mrs. Varga cry, and then Mrs. Varga apologized to me. True story. Anyway, ad ignorantium, it's for arguing from ignorance. That sounds like a lot of my law school classmates, by the way, who thought they were really knowledgeable about a topic but really only knew 3 facts, and they just made up a bunch of stuff, and then they're like, oh, I'm right. My computer kind of froze. And I was like, no. So here are some examples. No one has proven that UFOs exist, therefore they don't exist. UFO stands for unidentified flying object, so maybe that should have been something like nobody has proved that aliens exist, therefore they don't exist. I think that would be a better example. Dramatic eye roll. No one has ever found an alive or dead Loch Ness monster, therefore it is not real. Then why are there so many TV shows about it? No one has proven. No one has proven that there is life on Mars, therefore there wasn't. But what about the water stuff that they found? Or like the ice? Maybe there was. Anyway, do your research. Don't play dumb. Non sequitur? Non sequitur? I say non sequitur, I think. This is another Latin phrase, and it stands for it does not follow. In this type of fallacy, the conclusion of a deductive argument may be true or false, but it is a fallacy because the conclusion does not connect to the premises. Example: Stephanie drives a large truck, so she must own cattle. No. Dave has a truck, and we don't have cattle. We have a dog, and a cat, and then there's me and Dave. And my brother-in-law, he lives there too, but not cattle. No. Another example: if there was an adolescent present when the money was stolen, he or she most likely did it. Maybe, probably, but not necessarily. Depends on your view of teenagers, I guess. And like, maybe it depends really on where you live, because if I lived in Gary or Michigan City, yeah, with the amount of teens I saw in like juvenile court every week, but here, probably not. Moving on. Appeal to tradition. This occurs when you assume that something is best or correct because it is older, it is traditional, or it has always been that way. Hey, Dad. I know that this is how you've always done it, but let me show you my better, faster, more efficient way. Oh, you're not going to listen to me because I'm younger? Happens all the time. Happens all the time. So we, as younger people, have to wait until we get older to establish new things, unfortunately. Most of the time. Oh, like here, we normally do Thanksgiving at 1 o'clock, but everybody, like all the cousins are married, and they have other families to Thanksgivings to go to, but I was like, Dave, I don't want to do it at 1 o'clock anymore. At our house, we're going to have it at 4:30. We had to like fight tooth and nail to get it that way. God. Traditions are the best. But Thanksgiving is at 4:30 at my house, by the way. Let me just get back up on my stool. So examples, this kind of reminds me of a Tide commercial, or like Arm & Hammer. Of course this detergent is best. The formula hasn't changed for 40 years. But here's the thing, like now we have HE stuff, and so it's less diluted, and it works better in cold water and not just hot water. Sometimes you need to change. Okay, this one, I think it's funny, but I'll tell you why after I read it. My grandfather bought a Ford. My father bought a Ford, so Ford must be best. My family firmly believes in bow ties. So anything Chevy, GMC. When I met Dave, he had a Dodge, and they all just busted his chops all the time because he had a Dodge. But now he has a Ford, and they're like, still not a Chevy. So maybe I should have changed that one to say Chevy. Because Grandpa bought a Suburban. Like, he had the very original one, the one where the window in the, like, the back door that you, like, swing open so you can put your groceries in. It had the power window in the back, and it went, it went down. And then Uncle Mark bought a Suburban, and my dad bought a Suburban, and now Uncle Mark has a Tahoe, and Dad now has a Duramax, but he uses his Ford for plowing. But my dad bought me a Pontiac. That's a GM product. And now I have my Jeep, and he's just not happy about that in general. But, because I'm trying to be a big kid and buy my own stuff. But I'm getting sidetracked. This chapter's so long. So moving on to number 13 on page 399, ad populum. This is Latin for to the people. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. You guys remember that song from Kid Rock? I don't think I mean Kid Rock. Okay. Example. Okay, this distracts the audience's attention from examining a claim by arguing that the claim must be accurate, because many people believe it to be accurate. So a lot of people think that American cars are best, and Americans think that, but I mean, Volkswagens, they seem to last a long time, and they're diesel, and it's a car, so it gets uber good mileage. Yeah, you have to pay more for fuel. So let's go on to the examples and not my examples. Lots of people text while driving and don't wreck. As long as I'm careful, nothing will happen. If you're lucky, yeah, and if other people are watching out for you and not, and like, if you swerve and then they're not watching because they're texting too, and so they have to swerve and miss you, but that's only going to happen if they're not texting too. So, another example. Most people in St. Louis voted for candidate A. The state of Missouri must be for candidate A. There's more towns in St. Louis than, or in Missouri than just St. Louis, so no. Brand X is the most popular brand of LCD televisions and must be the best. Okay, well maybe Brand X is the most popular because it's like Walmart brand, and so it's the cheapest, and so it sells fastest, but the more expensive brand that's really better doesn't sell as fast because of the price tag. But in a year, those people are going to be like, oh, my TV is burned out. Time to go buy a new one. Don't want to buy this brand again. So they buy the other brand. Number 14, faulty emotional appeals. Although appealing to emotion is a legitimate form of appeal, it can become a fallacy when a speaker uses only emotional appeal or ethically manipulates an audience's emotions to get them to accept a claim. So don't only tug at their heartstrings, give us real information too. Cody's? Yeah. I'm getting this hiccup. An example of the faulty emotional appeals. A speech inducing fear that eating pork could transmit the H1N1 virus, rather than looking at the evidence that suggests transmission from pig to human is rare and the 2009 virus is a mutation, could be a faulty appeal to fear. So, I mean, this is kind of something that I've learned over the years, that I wait and get more information from the news instead of this one report before I make a decision. But I've also given up on watching a lot of news, and I spend a lot of my time coloring and watching Netflix, because sometimes the news is just too depressing. True story. Hey, that is finally the end of chapter 14, and I still have to cover chapter 15. So I'm going to upload this one real quick and send it to you, and then continue with chapter 15. And maybe I should watch this